Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Hobby Cheating Q&A Live. What is this? Well, this is where we spend about an hour, and it'll be about an hour today, uh, going over all of your hobby-related questions. So, anything you've got, hobby-wise, feel free to throw it in the comments, and we'll make sure to get them answered. Okay? All right. So, it's going to take a minute, as obviously I know the stream is a little behind me. But basically over here on, let's see, toward the chair. That side. Nope, that side. Had it right the first time. That side. There's some comments. You can comment in there. Ask your questions. Whatever you've got. Any hobby-related stuff, drop it in there. And we're going to go for about the next 60 minutes and try to answer everything you've got. Hopefully somebody can hear me. So somebody give me a little shout or ask a question or something. There we go. Okay. Good. Just want to make sure everything's coming through okay. All right. So somebody had left a few questions here before the show started, so I'll start on those while people are catching up and dropping in their other questions. So Rehan said, love your video on Grey Knights. Will purple power weapons and orange on the shield and eyes work with a green seal? I mean, that's a lot of very vibrant colors. Those three aren't really meant to go together for various reasons. You've got, so you're with green and purple, you're actually, like, the problem is it's sort of a split complementary scheme, but it's not quite far enough. What I'll say is it could work. The purple and orange will generally work, and purple and green will obviously work. That's classic villain colors. The problem is really going to be your balance more than anything. If you just have like this tiny bit of green, it's going to be very eye-catching against that scheme. So, I mean, you could do it as long as the green was highly desaturated. If your sort of main colors, again, same thing, like orange is a super bright color. If you put it just in one place, like on the shield, it's just going to draw all the attention and be very imbalanced. So, like, whenever you're using bright saturated colors, the key is they have to be in balance. They have to be like spread evenly around the miniature and or highly desaturated. So could you have a scheme with those three work? Sure. You'd need to push the orange way down, like kill all of its lumosity, and probably still have it in some other places as well. I'm generally more of a fan of minimalist color schemes. I'll be honest. Like, once you involve purple and green, which are two like extremely potent colors, there's sort of not a lot of other colors you can easily bring into it. You can sneak like your green could work if it's sort of a green blue. That will help better to balance everything out. And if it's minimal and if it's spread around, so I'm thinking more of like a blue green verdigris type of color. Especially if that's then desaturated some with some additional gray or white or darkened with something like a black or something like that. So, there you go. That's my answer. Dash. I recently tried AK Interactive Ultra Matte Varnish and it's fantastic. Yes, it is. It is the matte varnish of choice. Amazing product. How much do you thin it down when you apply? I use an airbrush. I always, not much, but I thin everything. I always just put maybe 2 or 3 drops of thinner in there. Just to keep everything moving. Thinner, think of it just like the grease in the wheels of your airbrush, right? And it always goes, excuse me, it always goes in the cup first, right? So, so you always want to make sure that's happening. And then, you know, just from there, let's say like an average figure, so like 1 fig, so 2 or 3 drops thinner and 6 to 8 drops of ultra matte, good to go. So, there you go. Okay, Jacob, hello from Poland. Hi, how you doing? Have you seen some very bright lava bases online recently? Any idea how to make that? Well, I have a tutorial on making lava bases, and if you look through there, I talk about how you get really intense colors. There are lots of tricks to getting intense colors. You know, part of it is using fluorescent colors. You can go that direction, but they need to be put over like a bright white. The key is no matter what you're using, use like a high lumosity color, yellow, orange, you know, mix a little bit of white in. And then there should be a very bright undershade. You're actually making the undershade do the work. So if you watch the lava base tutorial I have, the most recent one, you'll see how there's like a white, and then I'm laying down this very bright yellow or very bright orange or very bright color over top. So if you could use any of the fluorescent type colors, and those would really pop over that. So like a War Colors fluorescents are some of my favorites, for example, but there are plenty of others around. And putting that over the white, and it needs to be minimal. Like the key with making it look bright is the other stuff needs to be really dark, and it needs to be very minimal what's lit. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but like a white screen doesn't seem bright. A white square sitting in the middle of a black screen seems super bright. Okay? Contrast is king, as always. Okay, Weston. Using Nighthaunt chain rasp ports as Necron flayed ones, what's the best way to achieve flayed skin cloaks? That's a neat idea. I would say just paint them as skin. One of the neat tricks you could do is you could paint some stitching on there, which is actually like the super easiest thing in the world to do fake stitching. You just put a black line down, like just draw a line, a thin line, and then you cross hatch it with little black rectangles, and then you just take some white and you put it in the middle so there's still a small black ring around your rectangles. That's it. I once recorded a video on this, but I really hated it and sort of binned it. It's one of the like kind of lost episodes. But it's a really easy thing to freehand. If I can find some other video to wrap it into, I'll re-record it in the future. But yeah, it's a really easy thing to do. And painting them like a flesh color, any flesh color you want, frankly, or maybe even mixed flesh colors. By the way, have them and then have these lines you could stitch together and have like a very pale Caucasian skin on one side of the stitch line, and then like a darker African skin tone on the other side. That would make it feel very much like just a bunch of stitched together skin. So that's a really cool idea, by the way. I've never thought about that. Chain rasps are a little smaller than I think of flayed ones, but it's really cool. I like the idea. Trying to paint wings on a Nurgle rotfly. In my mind, they should look translucent. Any ideas on how to achieve this? I mean, more than I can explain here. So, like, I mean, translucency, you're saying how do you paint air? Is a really tricky thing. It can be done. The sort of rainbow scintillating pattern is a way you can go to kind of achieve that, because it will, in our heads, that's kind of what we picture those as. And that's just a matter of painting it like a fairly close to ivory color or whitish color, maybe a white gray, and then you just glaze on like a rainbow of various things. You can do it with just the washes, like you go crimson and then purple and then green. You kind of follow the rainbow along or whatever. I mean, actually painting them so that they're translucent is harder. One of the easiest things you can do is wherever there's a vein, like the structure that's holding the wing, you darken that down color-wise, and then you lighten the areas that are in the middle. Because translucency would mean that like light is passing through it, and so the thinner it is, the more bright it is, and assumingly in between the structure of the wings is where it's the thinnest. So that's the simplest way you can achieve it, but it's like I could do probably a 60-minute video on painting, quasi-translucent things. It's a difficult thing to do. One of the those kinds of like translucencies, rainbow pattern type of things of like a scintillating wing, like a dragonfly wing, or an oil stain are like some of the hardest things to actually paint. Nick Larking, when I try to do white metallic armor, it loses too much shine or looks too much like silver. Any tips on how to get the best white metallic? Well, I mean, the reason you're running into that is because there's like white metal isn't really a thing. What I mean by that is like it's very hard to distinguish that because white is the color that silver reflects. So it's the same thing. There's no difference. Like steel armor is just like its reflections are white. That's why non-metallic uses white to do the highest highlights of steel, right? So if you're talking about like truly white metal, it's a really, again, you guys are picking some things that are like some of the more difficult things you could possibly try to achieve, but I'll see if I can break it down. In actual true metallic metal, it's going to be really, really hard, because the problem is as you move the fig around, the lower parts that aren't white, that are metal, are going to then reflect light. And it's going to look like it's all just white. And you're going to lose any depth, right? So as you like turn the fig in your hand. That's why, like, generally you'll see people, if you want to see a good example of white non-metallic metal, which I know isn't what you're asking, but if you want to see what that looks like in play with the right amount of gray, I would highly recommend you go look at Gareth Nicholas's uh, White Scars, White Scar that he did. That's, I think, one of the more perfect sort of white non-metallic. And what you'd be trying to do with true metallic is effectively replicate the same thing. You'd go from white into a regular steel color. But that regular steel color would be just in the shadows. It'd be like about 30% of the total volume. And you would be using like a standard steel color, which is going to reflect less and appear more gray, as your shadow color. It's going to be a very tricky effect to pull off. And honestly, if I was doing it, what I would do is I wouldn't mess with metal medium. I just generally don't like metal medium and find it to be like really not looking at all right. I would just take a steel paint, a good steel paint, like a Vallejo metal color, and I would mix white paint in. That's more like what Banshee did when he did Colossus. So that's kind of how the Colossus is done. It's sort of a mix of NMM and TMM in one space by doing that. Ruas, Vince, is a plain snow base too boring, or would you spice it up with rocks, trees? Yes, I mean, absolutely it is. Any single texture base is too boring. It's not that somebody can't stand in an area that's just snow. Like, that is certainly humanly possible. But it's just, like, not interesting, right? So, absolutely, like, there should be stuff in the snow. There should be rocks. The snow should be blowing. It shouldn't be, like, there should be things that are sticking up out of it. You should have, various places where the snow is shoved into recesses where it's gathered and clumped. Like, just in general, that's going to make it the most interesting. So now, that being said, if you're gonna get like a pure snow thing, then at least try to color mix it. So like put a little blue hidden underneath it and then lay a little bit of snow on top. That way there's like a slight blue glow underneath. Just like you can play with it to get it to still have some kind of visual interest, but in general my advice would be, yeah, mix it up. It's otherwise it just looks like your dudes are standing on white frosting. Crandalisa, hello Vince, thank you for your latest video of horse fur. What do you recommend for dual mane horses, meaning white and brown horses? Do we base color gray and dark brown and repeat the video process? Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep, that you nailed it. In other words, like, sure, if you want to do like a painted horse or a spotted horse or something like that, yeah, you kind of mark out your spots first in sort of a darker color. You can do it with an airbrush or you can do it with whatever. Like, you could do the soft pattern with your airbrush. The fact that it bleeds some isn't going to matter because you're going to come over it with the texture and then mix it all together. Okay. And then the question is, what do you do with the wash? No, you still just do it last. You're just going to do it. You're going to do it as a very controlled glaze in that case. So whereas I could afford to be a little less controlled in my video because it was an all brown horse, you would just glaze in a very specific way, right? So there you go. Okay, so David, hi Vince, Vallejo metal color is incredibly bright, but with inks or shades it dulls down really hard. Any tips to tie shadows and highlights together? Yeah, you just got to make 50-50 mixes and kind of glaze them into the middle area. And you want to thin your inks on your initial glazes. So like when you're using inks or shades, the key is you need to be mixing those in thin proportions and building them up. So like don't just jump in hard all at once. Make sure that you're building it slowly. Okay. All right. Let's see. Jack Kirby. Oh, hey Jack. Wonderful artist. Hey Vince, I've got a few friends who are very casual and a few who insist on only taking tournament lists. Needless to say, this causes a lot of issues. How would you go about trying to resolve this? Well, not specifically an art hobby question, but a great question. The answer is change the anchoring mechanism. Everybody's on that set because you're playing standard 2,000 point lists. Change the mechanism. Play a campaign game where people are forced to do something different. Do a Path to Glory. You know what I'm saying? Like, change what you're playing so that the people who are locked in their ways have to fundamentally start from zero and play something different. Like try team games. That's a good way to get people to just like break out of their existing thing, because two people taking 1,000-point lists, you're still playing a 2,000-point game, but it's very different anchoring, right? And so, but that would be my way to go about it. Change the underlying structure, and you'll get people to change the way they're thinking. If you just can't say, hey guys, let's not beat up the fluffy bunnies, can we all just maybe find a space in the middle? That's the right way to go. I'm going to pause here real quick to say, at the end of this stream, well, not quite at the end of the stream. Right now it's 11:47 Eastern time when I'm doing this. At 1 p.m. Eastern, I will be on Mr. Mephisto's Twitch channel. You can find a link down in the description of this. And so if you want to come see me afterward, you can come see me there. He is doing a 27-hour charity stream for mental health. It's incredible. I am doing 2 hours with him up top. I'm not doing all 27. He's going to have a host of guests throughout the entire 27-hour block. And the reason I'm telling you about this is not just because you can make a donation for a great cause, namely mental health, something that I know, especially in the current world, a lot of people are obviously going to be struggling with, but also because you can win incredible amounts of stuff for any donation. So Meph went out and got donations of entire armies. I mean, he has 2 entire armies, like a whole Nurgle army and a whole Bone Reaper's army to give away, as well as tons of other stuff like Stormcast stuff. Just and the amount of, we're talking like $1,000 worth of armies here, by the way, that you can win for just donating a few dollars to mental health. So it's going to be amazing. Come check us out. The link is down in the description. I don't know a better way to get $1,000 worth of product than throwing a few dollars at mental health. Having a chance to win that's absolutely incredible. So do go check it out and give to a good cause. All right, so back to the questions. Sebastian Weiss, looking for an easy way to paint small leaves, Sylvaneth in this case, that creates a bit of depth while still being easy to do. Sure, so I'll give you my method. I mean, if you go back and watch, I think I talked about this in a Sylvaneth video somewhere. But here's what I do. Let's just take a pink leaf, for example, because a lot of people like those kind of pink leaves. Okay, I'm going to paint the whole thing a mid-tone pink. Then I'm going to take a tiny bit of crimson wash, not like a normal slap it everywhere wash. People use washes so indelicately, and they're a wonderful tool if used correctly. I'm going to take a tiny bit of that. I'm going to force it into the center of the leaf so it runs down into the vein and collects down at the base of the leaf. I'll let that dry. Then I'm going to take a little bit of white ink and mix it into that pink, and I'm going to come in around the outside of the leaf and go tick, 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 tick. Just real fast. Okay? Boom. You got a leaf. It's that easy. And that sounds like a lot, but it's really not. It goes really fast once you get it done, because you just pink them all, touch each one with a tiny little drop of wash, and then just maybe 7 or 8 or 9 little slashes across the edge of the leaf, and you are good to go. Okay. Hello from Portugal. What are the must-have of Vallejo metal colors? Sure, I'll give you my picks. In order: steel, silver, copper, gold, pale burnt metal, dark aluminum. There you go. Anything else is seasoned to taste. They're all fun and they all have uses, but those would be my picks. Best way to paint diamonds. I have a whole video on painting gems. You would replace, I have a couple videos on painting gems. Go watch I think the warpstone video where I talked about painting warpstone, and replace the yellow to green with a gray to white, and that's a diamond. You probably want to have little bits of blue and maybe a bit of purple in there. The diamond needs to reflect some kind of color of the ambient world, so you just very slight glazes, but that would be it. And then again, still, as always, as all faceted gems, the light needs to collect toward the bottom of the facet. So if this is the facet, okay, if it's this rectangle, then this top part up here is going to be the darkest, and this bottom part down here is going to be the lightest on an opposing line, right? And then you'll make sure all the edges are solid white. Bonesy, for someone without Facebook and therefore no access to the PMP, where is the good place on the internet to get feedback on my painting and minis? Well, there's lots of places. I mean, obviously the PMP is what we do, or what I do, but I mean, certainly you could look at Patreons that are around. There's lots of Patreons that will offer individualized feedback. That's actually probably your best learning method, because then you can have a hour with some of these amazing artists who will sit down and give you one-on-one feedback, and you'd be amazed what 6 months of that will do. Yes, it's an investment, but I don't know of a faster way to grow. You will never grow as fast as when you have that kind of one-on-one, hands-on tutorial. I mean, other places certainly you can just like if we're talking about not that. Again, lots of these Patreons have at lower cost options that have Discord servers with them, and so like oftentimes people will have options to post your miniatures in there and get feedback on Discord. I know like Miniac and Travarian both have that kind of a setup in their Patreons, so you could always go check that kind of thing out. And then you're in a small group, and I know they themselves monitor it and look at it and give feedback, so that could be an option too. Okay, Devin, do you have any suggestions on a good approach for really distressed metal for the new necrons? Uh, Lots of different options. Like it depends on what you want. I've seen a ton of videos about different rust mechanisms, and Adam put out one yesterday. Tabletop Minions about some light rust, and I mean there's all sorts of items out there. The Any of the videos I've ever done on battle damage or rust, you could just apply those techniques straight over to necrons. I'm thinking about doing a Necron video. It won't be out for like 2 months if I decide to do it. And right now I was more involved in putting together this big video for this Crimson Fist. But my general answer is, take any of the sort of battle damage or weathering or rusted metal videos I've done, and you could just apply it straight over the Necrons. Okay. Alexis, hello Vince, thanks for the Q&A. Any thoughts about acrylic gouache for mini painting? I've been using the Liquitex range for bright colors a few days. It's incredible, so bright and saturated. Yeah, they're super cool. I have some. I have some acrylic gouache that I use sometimes. Yeah, they're interesting. They're very matte. It's something I use for very specific purposes. Yeah, they're a good paint. There is nothing wrong with them. There's a couple different forms of them out there. And yeah, I mean, I know Marco has used them quite a bit. So, he talks about them in some videos. I certainly think they're perfectly viable. Yeah. Anytime, as long as you're dealing with like artist level stuff in the general paint world, they can certainly be brought over to minis without issues, which those are going to be. What you want to avoid are like bargain basement, sort of like low pigmented, like below student grade stuff. That's where you're going to get into trouble, and the paints will be bad and they'll look bad on the mini. Brandon, hey Vince, have you ever painted Battletech? What kind of advice would you give to painting a small model like a mech that's supposed to be over 10 meters tall? Yeah, yes, sure. I've painted a Battletech mech. Actually, I painted quite a few of them. I played Battletech for many years, and I painted lots of little mechs I liked. The answer is treat the volumes as one big thing. Don't try to over highlight it. It just won't look right in scale. You kind of have to fake it a little. But treat the volumes as though they're going to be heavily shadowed. Like look at the line drawings or the art in the books itself, and you'll see that they emphasize usually like heavy shadows. Pin washing is generally your friend because those things often a lot of times have very specific little, like Battletech mechs traditionally have like lots of panels, and those kind of panel lines need to be pretty dark and pretty brought out. The key is to treat it as sort of like, I'm trying to think of a good example. What would be a good one to think about? I don't know. Sure, let's just take like the Atlas, right? He has this big, very humanoid frame, and so like where the structures go underneath, like under his big arm, under his big fists or whatever, like make sure those are put into relative shadow would be my answer. But it's hard. I mean, they're effectively at such a small scale. It's not something I really enjoy painting. The BattleTech game I want would be using almost like original action figure size BattleTech mechs. I know when they made the new BattleTech stuff, they did a couple 3-ups. So 3-ups are like this big, right? And I know Matt DiPietro got his hands on like the Atlas at some point, and I've never been more jealous of somebody in my entire life. Like my dream, the thing that would make me buy a 3D printer or pay somebody to 3D print stuff is if I could get probably like 8, 9, 10 inch tall, accurate Battletech mechs, especially from like the 2750 era, or maybe some 3250 stuff. But yeah, like if I could get an old style Black Knight, ooh, molto bene, like 9, 10 inches tall, I would be Oh, I'm just getting excited thinking about it. I got to move on. All right. Anyways, yeah. So that's the thought. That was a bit of a digression, but you got me going there. All right, miniatures. Hello from Brazil, Vince. Do you think blocking highlights and shadows before stippling transitions on cloth is a good idea to make sure we're not missing contrast? Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a very valid way to go about it. It's a great way to sort of just smooth out those kind of. I think stippling is an underused technique. I mean, it's amongst most miniature painters. If you look at somebody like Kirill Kanayev, arguably one of the best miniature painters in the world, certainly. He uses stippling like crazy. If you zoom way in on his stuff, you'll see the little dots he's using. So he stipples all over the place. I think it's a great way to sort of smooth out and get a nice transition. It's also a lot easier than just consistently. It actually tends to be a lot easier than trying to get like blends by traditional strokes. So, Hugo, how can I reduce or completely eliminate chalkiness? Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Chalkiness comes from paint being broken down too thin and the pigment density not being high enough. If you're talking about chalkiness in white, you can go watch my smooth white video. It's like 154 or something. And you can add in gloss varnish to white, which will smooth it out because it'll cover for the pigment because they both the white pigment and gloss varnish reflect true white, so you can smooth that out. You can glaze over the top of things. That'll eliminate the chalkiness. So like when you do this tends to come in bright colors where the pigmentation, once it gets thin and separates, looks chalky. So you can glaze back the other direction with filters, and that will eliminate it. So you can take a very, very, very thin glaze and go that direction. Those are all kind of tricks. The other option is you can just not thin your paint that much. So use a technique different than glazing. Go to something just like extreme wet blending or something. Emily, happy Saturday. Thanks for the fur tutorial. Hey, happy to help. Joel, hello Vince. I'm painting a historical figure in 1/35 scale, and for the first time I'm going to try to integrate global highlight and shadow colors. I'm thinking ice yellow for highlights and dark blue for shadows, trying to capture light conditions a sunny summer day. Do you think it will work? Yes, I think you have exactly the right colors. I have no advice. I mean, you're on about it exactly right. Warm shadows produce warm highlights produce cool shadows. I think those are great colors. I think you're right on exactly what I would be using. I mean, ice yellow and sort of glacier blue are my traditional go-tos for that kind of work as far as highlights, and navy blue and deep crimson, like a gothic crimson or something, are my go-to shadow colors for that, depending on which way the highlights are flipped. Okay, Thomas Rader, any advice on painting less textured models such as Eldar? Starting a new project and not sure where to go, as I normally dry brush quite a bit and smooth surfaces are very alien. Yeah, sure. I mean, yes, big flat surfaces like that generally are going to require you to do a lot more of something like glazing or something like that. I'll give you a ton of options. Here you go. Ready? Option number one, go watch my recent videos on oil painting. Smooth surfaces are a dream for oil paints. It's easy. It removes all blending. You can do everything in minutes. It's fine. So there's option one. That's very different, but it's an option. I mean, it will make your life so easy because you'll blow through each Eldar and have incredible contrast and ultra smooth blends, and it'll take maybe like a half hour per Eldar to do all their main colors. Then you just, as you batch paint them, then you just set them aside and let them sit for a day or two to let the oil paint dry, give them a good varnish, and then go on and pull out the detail work like normal. And bing, bang, boom, you're ready to rock. Option two is obviously, using an airbrush or something like that in a heavier fashion can help that a lot. Option three, you could still try to go with a dry brushing technique. You just want to get a nice soft makeup brush. You can go buy big packs of these. You want to look for stuff that's meant to do eyes or blush or stuff like that. So you just use big soft dry brushes like this. And then you can get progressively smaller. Where's my super small dry brushes? Oh, I don't know. Sorry, I can't find them. But you can get super small makeup dry brushes at the same time. They're hidden in my cup here somewhere. And you can just kind of progressively, very lightly with almost no paint, dry brush that way. And that's kind of the way to go. So there's three options for you. I hope one of those works. Rust Belt Blacksmith. Vince, I'm assembling a soul grinder. There's going to be some gaps to fill. I have GW's liquid green stuff. Have you ever used it? I want to try it, but I've never used it. I have. It's junk. Throw it out. Is my honest answer. You want to fill gaps on a soul grinder. I've built many a soul grinder. I love me the soul grinder. I wish it was actually good. This is your answer. A nice slurry. You take some Tamiya extra thin. You slap in a bunch of sprue, just sprue pieces. You let it sit for 24 hours. You give it a good, really good shake, or use something like that. And you use this to assemble it, number one. And then once you're done, you use this to cover the gaps. and then sand it down, because this will dry as hard plastic. Sand it down a little bit, bing bang, you're set and ready to rock. I hate liquid green stuff. If you want to use a putty, because you've already assembled it, then get yourself either a plastic putty from Vallejo or a perfect putty. Come here. There we go. Perfect plastic putty from Deluxe Materials. This is really, really good stuff. And you can thin that down with water and put it in there, and then also sand that down. That's your other option if you've already assembled everything. Let's see. Sam. This is a funny question. San, why does nobody add specular highlights on human heads in real life? The forehead is quite reflective. I don't know what would call that to your mind, San. Why would you be saying that right now? No, I mean, yes, certainly you can. Some people do. I see a lot of artists do it, but especially like on competition stuff. I think in general it's tough because you've got to really smooth it out. I mean, as you can see, this very bright reflection on my big bald forehead is like, you can see how slowly it fades out into the red color of my head. So it's just tough, I think. Best white primer, according to Vince, the Badger Stynel Res White is actually a really good white primer. I use it all the time. Sand Orange, how to combine zenithal undershading and metallic paints. No, you don't undershade metallics. You can zenithal with metallics. I have videos on that, but you don't do the two because the metallic itself is going to be opaque. The pigment on that is very opaque, and so it doesn't really allow much through. How to make a large, flat, non-metallic metal surface interesting. Make it like in any of 100 ways. There's lots of ways to do that. Chips and damage that break it up so it's not just one smooth, consistent transition. You can use different kinds of reflective lighting. So look at look at what Land does and how he's doing it, or Kirill or anybody like that, where they're using a lot of lines and colors and things moving in unusual directions. Sam Len's been doing that a lot lately too. That's another option. Glazed in other colors and reflections. That's another option, because if it's really that reflective, it's going to pick up colors from the environment. Best way to fix mistakes on yellow, i.e. a black spillover. Repaint it ivory and then put the yellow back over top. Paint it a very opaque color like ivory and then put yellow back over top. Not the whole thing, just the area, the tiny little area wherever you got black. Rehan, so on the gray knights, the purple on the weapon, the green on the shield, maybe a green eye. Will this work better? Yes, get rid of the orange and you'll work a lot better. Wow, too long didn't read. How does one go about painting things at night? This is an extremely complicated question that I'm not sure I could answer here. I'm going to do, it's been on my list forever of doing a whole video about night painting. The key is I'll give you the short version. Here you go. All your highlights need to switch to blue. And be very light and desaturated like moonlight. And your shadows need to become a lot stronger. You'll have whole areas of the piece with very little detail actually picked out. And everything needs to have that sort of shift to a kind of navy tone. If you have a light source in the piece, it should be extremely dominant. So if there's OSL going on. This is a hard thing to sell. Painting something and having it look like it's at night is hard, because when you're looking at it in reality, so when I actually pick up the fig and look at it, it's not nighttime. And the lighting conditions around me don't look like nighttime. They look like super bright fluorescent and yellow and high Kelvin lights. So there's going to be this natural disconnect. I'm looking at the figure and I'm like, okay. But it'll sell in a photo if it's on like a black background. It's not going to sell as much in real life because there's just a disconnect in your brain. Okay. Gonzalo. Oh, thank you very much. I'm glad you like all the videos. All right. Mikey, found quite like the result of adding matte shadows to true metallic metal and armor brown. Yep, absolutely. Good matte shadows. Okay, let's see. Arden, hey Vince, thanks for all of your content. Just wanted to ask you about ergonomics. I struggle a bit physically when I paint several hours per day, back, neck, hands. How do you approach this? Sure. Well, step one, buy a good chair. This is the third version. This is the third of these chairs I've had in the 6 years I painted. My chairs last me about 2 years because of how much I sit in this stupid chair all day. Like, this has lumbar support. back here behind me that I can move. There's an actual little pillow that I can move up and down that will push directly into my back and force me into the proper posture. Keep your feet planted on the ground. You should be at exactly the right, like your chair should be adjusted at the height so that your leg is like this and your foot is directly even on the ground. If your legs are up or down or dangling, you're incorrect. Your chair should be, your knees should be at like a right angle. Okay, or maybe slightly above. They can be like, 95 degrees, but they shouldn't be up in any way bigger than that. And you want to keep them planted as often as you can. When it comes to actual posture, try to paint like this. If you're going to lean forward, get yourself a nice big lap pillow so you can set your elbows on them and still retain your posture and hold it. If you have to, then every so often lean forward, brace your elbows on your knees, and lock your, I know I'm out of frame, but and elbows on your knees and lock your hands together. And then make sure you don't stay in that position because it's definitely a stress position. Don't stay in there for too long. Return back to here and do whatever you're going to do. Give yourself a break every few minutes. Don't sit in a single position more than honestly 15 minutes. You should be stopping every 15 minutes, even if it's just for 30 seconds to stretch your legs back out, stand up, sit back down, and then continue your work. Never go more than 45 at most. That'll generally reduce it. What's your favorite GW Mini to paint that are on 25 millimeter bases? Daemonettes. Easy answer. Daemonettes are beautiful. I love them. They have really, really great faces. Jarrett, Vince, I was wondering how you store your oil paints and HBA paints. Well, I have a nail polish rack and they stand up. For things that, most of those will stand up. If the top of the tube is rounded and they won't stand, I get little clips. These. Okay. And I hot glue one side of them to the plastic rack, to the nail polish rack where I have other paints, on the bottom. And then I open the clip up and stick the little bottom part of the tube in there, the part that doesn't have paint in it, and then they just hang from there. But in that case, those are the obtulungs, and those will stand straight up, so that's fine. But all the scale artist ones were really annoying because they have these rounded tops, so they all have that little mechanism. JPIC, have you been playing with the oil paints lately? Any tips to paint the brightest highlights? Oh, yes, I absolutely have. You're going to see that in the Crimson Armor video. The key is you let it dry, then you go back in with a second application. You're never going to get the highest highlights on your first application. You're just setting the general tones, and then you go back in. My new favorite for that high highlight is actually this Obtulung 502 light flesh tone. I've been playing around with that quite a lot, and I really like it. It's a little bit naturalistic. It's a little bit warm. And you just go back in, you put a couple of dots of that, or little dots of that on, then you just smooth it out, and molto bene. Vitali, hi Vince, what is your opinion on hardening tree bark bases with layers of PVE or super glue? Would you recommend it? Sure you can. It's not generally necessary. It depends how much the thing is going to be handled. I have tree bark in a bunch of bases, and I didn't really do that. You can put on some varnish or something, but, is it necessary? No. What is this thing doing? I've had tree bark bases in armies I've used for years, and I've never chipped them. So, I guess just, depends on how you transport your minis and how rough you are on them. So, if you feel like there's a chance they could get hurt, it's not going to hurt anything to do it, so it's fine. I'm not going to try with that name. I'm just going to say store. Hi, Vince. I'm currently roughly on the Citadel painting app skill level, although I can improve a lot. Which techniques would you suggest to focus on moving on to expand one's repertoire? Just understanding contrast and, using that, and then through contrast working on kind of your blending. So, it sounds like if you're still relatively early in your journey, then what you want to be working on is just the basics. Paint control, understanding paint consistency, how to make the paint, regardless of dilution, apply to in a good way is really the best thing you can do, because through that unlocks everything else. Okay. Manzac Miniatures, word up, cameo. Let's see, Dungeon Acid, any trick on painting flags, banners? I messed one up. The airbrush is a great way to start because it'll very naturally pick out the waviness to it, and then from there just apply the freehand. I've got multiple different videos on freehand, so I would say go check those out. But it's effectively just a big flat surface, so your airbrush is always going to be your friend. on something like that, because the larger, the flatter the surface, the better it is for the airbrush, because you get nice even application, and the flag is even better because you can use the slight waves and stuff to your advantage to create little small shadows. Okay. So yeah, I would say go there, and with the freehand, I've got a couple different videos on like simple freehand, detailed freehand. Go check that out. It's just build it up. Build it up is the key. You start simple, and then you just keep building. Devin said almost every mech is on Thingiverse, and scaling the models up is trivial. Huh. Okay. Good to know. I might have to look into that. I'll be honest, I never even thought about it before this stream. Okay. This is exciting news. Okay, let's see. Mikey, Vince, do cool highlights and warm shadows occur in nature? Yes, they do, absolutely. They occur at night. So shadows at night tend to have red in them, whereas the highlight is blue. It's just what's happening there is not magic. It's just what's happening with the reflective light spectrum. As the cold is getting filtered out from the reflected highlight, all that's left is the warm. That's what's happening, right? So that's why that's occurring scientifically. AZ Barbarian, like you, I love collecting paints nearly as much as painting miniatures. Yeah, it's true. I have a problem. Or playing games. What I'm curious about is this: if you could only choose one brand of paint, what would it be? Oh God, I don't know. That's really hard. I mean, I wouldn't. But gun to my head, what would I choose? Either scale or pro acryl, both of which are now big enough, and I like them enough that I would feel like I would have a big range. But I mean, I wouldn't. There'd be no reason to ever do that because they have different purposes. Different paints get used. I mean, right now to the left of me are like a bunch of oil paints, some AK Interactive 3rd Gen, some pro acryl, some scale, some Vallejo, some secret weapon. This is all in like one project, right? There's a Warcolors one in there, so like, I have different paints I like and use them for different purposes. Thank you, Clean Brush. That's very nice, and I don't know about that, but I appreciate it. Randall, speaking of the slurry, how long will it keep for? Well, if it's sealed in something like this, like in its original container, I made this like 5 months ago, and it's still super liquid because this container is like mega airtight. So as long as it's airtight, forever is the answer. Is how long it'll keep. Let's see. Oh, how to make spit strings inside a jaw. Oh, that's super easy, actually. That I can explain in 5 seconds. You buy this. This is called Uhu glue. It's really easy. This is all you need. And then you get yourself some kind of little stick or a toothpick or something. You take the top off of this. You touch the stick. You squeeze out a tiny bit. You touch the stick to the end of the paint. Like get a little globby globby. And you go, and every time you touch a spot, it'll stick a new strand. And then when you're done, you just let it rest for a second, twist and pull away the stick. Ta-da! Spit. It's that easy. That's all there is to it. Okay. Oh, was one of my dogs spinning in the background? That's funny. Yeah, they're all in here. They're all back there. Okay. All hands on the aircraft carrier to defensive stations. Yeah, indeed. That'll be. I'm not worried. That table's strong. Let's see. The dogs have learned not to mess with the mini, so they know better. Hi, Vince. I've been thinking about playing with contrasting light sources. Like, sure. Yeah, one cold, one warm. Yeah, sure. So, there's like, if you're asking how to do it, it's just do it, I guess. Like, paint the. The key is you're making one side cold highlights and one side warm highlights. It's not just that. And it's basically like your primary light and your reflected light. Now, how to set yourself up for that is really easy. So make the room dark and then like light a candle from one side of the mini, take a picture. Okay? Or something like that. Make a warm light source. Set up an orange light, do something. See what's lit. Then set up a colder light on the other side, shine it up, take a picture. And then just, look at the two and notice what each one is highlighting. If you can set up this complicated lighting scheme all at once, if you've got the setup to do that, then just do that and take a picture. And then just follow along. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And then where the cold and warm light meet, effectively you've got shadow. Like, that should be the definition, right? So it can be a little tricky to figure out exactly how to balance it out, but you want it to be, in between the two is shadow. Like, that's what's happening. If you have two lights shining at something, where neither one is hitting, that's shadow, right? And so generally that's what's going to separate your two pieces. If you actually go watch the interview with the artist I did just last night with St. John Scott, he has two pieces that do this really well. And if you like, just look at what he does there and break that down. Like, again, don't just look, see, and stare at it for maybe 20 minutes and break it down. You'll see how he like goes from the light color and then into faded and then into a shadow and then back up into the cold color. So like warm highlight and then down and then shadow and then up into the lightest of or the weakest cold and then up into cold highlight. So there you go. Okay. And no problem, Alex. You're free to ask questions. That's what we're all here for, buddy. But I hope that helps. The real answer is it's always a very organic process. There's no one secret to it because where the light is sitting and how strong they are and stuff like that is going to matter a lot. There's 1,000 different ways to do it. The real answer is just get into it. Pick a fig you don't care about that much and pick some warm highlight colors and pick some cold highlight colors and just do a piece completely in like orange and bluish tones. And just doing that will be super instructive to you as to getting you to understand the basic stuff. My dog had to get up in her chair. Okay. Let's see. Speaking of oils, regular round brushes seem a little soft for working with oil paint. Any suggestions for a brush with stiffer bristles? I just use okay. This is the brushes I was using with my oil paint right here. I'll show you all of them. When I oil paint, this is what I use. So it's about all of this. Each one of these is slightly different size. Some are synthetic, some are sable, and they like in general I use synthetics to start because I just find it easier. I buy like size 3 and size 6 synthetics that have a relatively solid bristle structure to them. And then I smooth it out with sables usually down the line, especially in the past two. Okay. San, how to prevent work around streaking when using loaded brush? The key is just practice. Like sounds like you have a little too much of the tip color on there. If it's streaking, you want a very small amount of that, and you want the bottom paint to be very liquid. If you have a very small amount of the top paint, like very small, like so much less than you think, and a very liquid paint in the belly of the brush, you'll get it smooth because the water will force it. The liquid and the wet paint will force the thick paint smooth. So it's really just a practice thing. Loaded brush is real tricky, and frankly, not something you have to do. Like you could wet blend and achieve the same effect. So you can always just look at something like that. Let's see. Matthew, is there a resource vid on how to do color variation? I have minis that are mostly one color, and I'm not sure where to put the extra colors. I don't have one. There's tons of videos on color theory, and that's what I would recommend you start with, because it's not like anybody's going to necessarily have your exact mini. So the key is just understanding basic sort of the color theory aspects, and you'll get where you can sort of put spot highlights around. Shortest answer is always be establishing color triangles when you can. So like have 3, if you're going to introduce a new color, have 3 spots of it in a roughly triangular shape. That's kind of the rule of thumb. Doesn't always need to be true. There's lots of ways to break it. There are always more guidelines, but whatever. That's kind of the idea. All right. Zenithal highlighting necrons with Vallejo metal colors with an airbrush. Any suggestions for the colors in dry brush sketch after applying the Zenithal? I would use some good old-fashioned steel, silver, and then I would brush apply some Molotow liquid chrome. If you want like the shiniest of shiny, and I don't know that you'd like. So what I would do is I would use silver base, shoot black ink from below, shoot silver from the top, very, 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 very lightly dry brush in pure silver, and then come back in with the Molotow chrome and create them pop lights. That's what I did with my Necron kilt team, and they're like mirrors. Their heads, I can flip one of them up toward me and see my own face in the skull. That's how strong the reflection is. Because I wanted like Terminators, like that's like not Terminators like Space Marine Terminators, like dun 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 dun, like that kind of Terminator. Okay. Let's see. Hi, Vince. I was wondering what you think of the artist opus dry brush technique, specifically how often they moisten their dry brush. Yeah, I think it's fine. It's obviously another valid way to go. There's plenty of interesting ways that you can use these tools. And I don't think there's anything wrong at all with it. You can produce some really cool effects. So somebody like Bohan uses that sort of a technique a lot, and obviously to, really cool, impressive effect. It's effectively just super stippling, right? Like that's what you're doing when you're doing that kind of a thing. And yeah, I think it's super cool. If you're achieving a cool looking thing, I don't think there's a bad technique. So that's always going to be my answer. Legionnaires, has Vince done a video on the benefits of each paint range? Yes, I have. This would be Hobby Cheating 80. Maybe one of the more successful videos I have. But yes, I go through every paint range that was available at the time. I probably need to do a part 2 because there's been so many new paints introduced since I did that video like 4 years ago or 3 years ago. A crazy number of additional paints. So I probably need to do a part 2 at some point. But that'll get you, that's all the basics, like Citadel, Vallejo, scale, that kind of stuff. There's a lot in there. Let's see. Hey Vince, sorry if it's been asked, but when are we going to see some new armies on parade? I really want to do that. Thank you so much for asking. I really want to do it. Like, I have multiple armies backed up in the queue, and I'd really like to get photos of all of them. I just keep painting stuff instead of just sitting around and taking pictures. So at some point, I promise I will get it done at some point. I really want to do those videos. Maybe I'll take, like, sometime this year, maybe I'll take a little vacation from actual work. And because between painting and working like 50 hours a week, I don't have much in the way of free time, so. Aviad, hey Vince, thanks for the stream. Any pointers on getting that brushed metal texture when doing non-MM shiny armor as opposed to the smoother style? Ultra, ultra, ultra thin lines. I have a whole video on brushed steel. I would highly recommend you go check it out. I'll show you. It walks through exactly the technique. The key is just ultra thin lines and then glazes on top. It is the simplest technique, but it takes a long time. George, hey Vince, I recently picked up the Scale 75 red set. Have you got any tips or advice on using scale colors? Yeah, they're great. That red set's freaking awesome. I mean, they're gel-based paints, so you'll the normal stuff with gel-based paints applies. They're not going to apply like your traditional layer paints, like a Vallejo that use a liquid medium, since they use a gel medium. It's more about putting the paint on and then pushing the paint around on the miniature and smoothing it out. They're great for things like wet blending and stuff like that. And that red set, especially the brighter reds like the Antares red and stuff, are really awesome over like white or ivory undershades. They give you like pop, punch you in the face red. So there you go. Hey Vince, what do you recommend for fluorescent paints? So I have a video on on a review for the Scale FX series and the War Colors fluorescents, and those are the two I recommend. I really like them. Now, are the Golden Liquitex fluorescents any good? I have no idea. I haven't used them, so I cannot. I'm sorry, I can't give you an answer on that. I've used the Vallejo. It's fine. They're a little dry, a little hard. I've used the new 3rd gen AK Interactive stuff. Again, they're okay. I've used fluorescent pigments. Those are interesting. But ultimately, my true love is to grab equal parts the FX color series from Scale and the War Colors fluorescents. I think the War Colors fluorescents are some of the absolute best out there. Amy, oh, hold on, sorry. Where'd it go? There it is, Amy. I'm getting a lot of watermarks while trying to glaze shadows into my flesh tone. How do you avoid this? Took a break from painting an eye. You're not wicking enough water out. That's what's not happening. You need to hold your brush against your paper towel longer, wick out the excess liquid. That's what's causing the tide marks. Okay. Oh yeah, thank you, AZ. I also did a video on my go-to colors from ranges. That's also another one I did. I forgot all about that video. Have you ever painted a chromatic aberration effect? I don't know what that means, so I'd have to say no. Ariel, hey Vince, hope you're well. I'm interested in starting with oils for washing. What colors and brands would you recommend starting with for oil washing? Go to my oil wash video. I show you exactly the colors I'd recommend starting with. So again, that's like Hobby Cheating, maybe 80s or 90s, somewhere in that range, the first 100. And I show you the exact colors. There's 3 colors. There's like a burnt sienna, a purple, and ivory black, I think. And just get yourself some good Mona Lisa or Gamblin white spirits, and you're good to go. Okay. Thanks for the tips on painting smooth panels. Going to try the glaze method. Okay, cool, great. Yeah, and yes, it will. It works great over Zenithal. Pietro, thank you so much for all the teaching. Oh, that's wonderful. I'm glad to help. What's the difference between an ink and a paint? Ink uses a completely liquid pigment and liquid medium. It's highly transparent. Paint uses solid pigment and then sometimes liquid medium. There are also other additives mixed into paint, and they are much more opaque, right? Or let's call it translucent. That's a fair statement. Let's see. Devin, I sent you a link for an example search for Marauder model on the PMP. Looks like Thingiverse pulled the models they had because they were ripped from, but there are good models still out there. Okay, cool. I'll take a look, man. Thanks. That's awesome, Devin. I mean, like, again, I need to figure out who's, like, I know some people will print 3D models for you, but I need to find somebody with a, like, high-end resin printer who could paint, like, a full-scale 9 or 10-inch Black Knight or an original Atlas or, like, maybe an Awesome, like the original Awesome. No clan mechs. Hate the look of clan mechs. No, there's no elegance to them. Okay. Let's see. Noah, I'm about to start a set of Space Marine Reavers and was wondering if you have any tips for Zenithal and contrast paints. Yeah, I mean, just standard Zenithal on the Reavers works really well. And then as far as the contrast paints go, I mean, it just depends on your chapter, right? But yeah, contrast paints through the airbrush are fantastic over a Zenithal. I mean, really fantastic. You can do it also just with brush application, and it'll work fine. Just make sure you smooth them out. Use a little contrast medium. You're better doing sort of 2 coats of it, thin down with some contrast medium rather than doing 1. And yeah, like Juan Hidalgo is he's the man when it comes to using contrast. I don't know that there's anybody better with them than him, honestly, at this point. What's the best way to thin down Army Painter paints? Just generally a little bit of so if you're running into issues with any kind of gel, then the answer is always get a little bit of flow improver and mix that with your water, and that will get you flowing more like a traditional liquid medium. Do you have any recommendation for a red glaze over metallics for Blood Angels? I really like Cult of Paint's recent Ultramarines. They use Tamiya for the blue. Some I've tried are coming out magenta. Well, I mean, if you want to stick in their range, the Tamiya clear red is like an amazing color. But beyond that, sure. There's a couple good red inks from Dalaroni you could use. You could try some of the red contrast paints. I think those would be fine. You know, thin them down a little bit because they're really potent. So, like, put a little of any kind of medium in there. Doesn't really matter. Just airbrush thinner would be fine. And those will really work, like Flesh Terror's red or Blood Angel's red. Honestly, I think over the metal will look good. You're getting them. You said that they look a little magenta. That's because you're reflecting white light off of steel through red. White plus red makes pink. So you need to warm up that steel. Like, you need to add a little brown or something into it underneath, and that'll pull it back into a red tone. Oh my god, including a night-sized atlas. Devin, I need all these files. You've just changed my life. I want you to know that. Yes, like... Oh, I'm getting really excited here, people. This is something completely irrelevant to this stream, but I'm sorry. This is revolutionary information. Okay, so I'm going to lightning round the rest of these because we're getting to the end of the time, and I do have to keep it on point today. Real quick to mention, after this, so after I shut down this stream at 1 p.m. Eastern, so about 30 minutes from now, I'm going to be on Mr. Mephisto's stream. The link is down in the description. It is a 27-hour charity stream for mental health. You can go check it out. It's gonna be super fun. I'll be doing 2 hours with him. If you donate at all, you have a chance to win like multiple armies / figs. Like, he has so much product to give away. It's crazy. People have donated like mad. So you can win a full, and I mean full, like huge OBR army, Nurgle army, bunch of other stuff. So definitely go check that out. There's so many different things to win, and all you have to do is give a few bucks for mental health, which is something I think we can all get behind as needs a lot of support, especially in these times, which are generally tough on a lot of people. So do go check that out. Okay, let's see. Now we go quick. Kater, been watching your vids recently, like how you present information. How long were you painting before you started competing in Golden Demon and the like? Oh, gosh. A long time, like 17 years probably or something. 15 years? 15 years. But I mean, painting seriously? I wasn't painting seriously at that time. Most of that time was hate painting. The real answer to your question is, how long was I painting seriously before I went to compete? About 3 years. where like I started buckling down and saying I would like to get good at this, other than just occasionally angrily slapping paint on minis, which was like the first 12 years of my painting career. Vince, how can you pump so many videos? Because I sacrifice quality for volume. There you go. And yes, my dog is incredibly adorable back here. You can see her head up on her chair. That's where she likes to sit. Let's see. If I'm painting a lot of flesh, should I follow the warm color zenithal guide? It can't hurt. It certainly can't hurt. It will make your flesh look a lot warmer. Pietro, I mostly use homemade wash. Is there a good way to make it flow less? Like bring it from the Agrax consistency to strong tone consistency? Make it flow less. Gosh. Yeah, I suppose you could mix in a little bit of like almost like a retardant, like a gel retardant, like Vallejo makes a gel retardant. You mix in a small amount of that, that would probably slow it down. I've never tried to go that direction, so I honestly can't say. That's purely a guess. Okay. The first awesome I painted as a teenager had a clown face and blue polka dots. Nice. Are you getting your inks online or from an art supply store? Generally online, but I'll often order them from like, you know, wherever, Amazon or Dick Blick or somebody like that. Not caught one of your live streams before, but your hobby painting videos have really helped. Oh, well, that's great. Thank you very much. I'm super happy to help. Robert, any about to start painting your Techless Longhorns? Yes. I'm thinking cream and rich purple is the main colors, but struggling with a third. I mean, if you're going to have gold on there, that's your third, because that's yellow. So there's kind of my simple answer, right? I mean, that is gold's true color is yellow. Can you link in the chat for the Mephisto stream? I think I can, yes. Let me see. I think it will let me link. That's a great idea. That is a very bad link. It did a whole bunch. It did the dumb misdirect thing. Give me a moment. I will grab the real link. It's down in the description, but I'll grab it right now. But I'll grab the real thing. Sorry, everybody. Apologize for the slight delay here. All right, there we go. Ta-da! There we are. So now you can come join me at 1 p.m. Eastern and maybe donate $1 or $2 or a few dollars or whatever you can do for mental health and have a chance at winning a huge amount of prizes. Oh, okay, cool. See, Scott sent you a messenger about people I'd like to see you interview. Yeah, that's awesome. Great. I'll take a look. When will the Sons of Behemoth be released? Oh God, I wish I knew, because I can't wait to get my hands on them giants. There's going to be a lot of giant action over the next year. What do you enjoy outside of painting and YouTube? I don't understand the question. And then, let's see. Okay, great. So there you go. Come check out the stream. And thank you again, everybody. So many great questions today. I really appreciate it. I got to run these little monsters out so I can get ready for the next stream. But thank you, everybody, for all the hobby questions. I hope all of this was helpful. I'll be back next month. As always, follow me on Twitter. I announce on Twitter always, generally in a little more than an hour in advance like I did for this one. This was kind of backed up against Meth Stream, but normally I always do these on Saturday. It's either the second or third Saturday of the month. And, I mean, assuming I don't have other things, the past couple months over the summer have been really crazy. But yeah, if I can get those printouts, you're going to see me paint something Battletech in a future video. You bet your bottom dollar. So, at any rate, thank you very much, everybody. I really appreciate it. Oh, thanks, Sam. And as always, go check out that stream. You can also, by the by, if you're a player of AOS, there's a little survey down in the description I'm running right now about balance in AOS. So if you're a player, hey, go fill out that survey. It takes less than a minute. It's only 10 questions. And, oh no, Loft of the Universe, he said, what do you enjoy to do in your free time outside of painting YouTube? That was sarcasm. That was me being funny. I understood your question. I was just being funny. There is nothing except painting and YouTube and sitting in this chair. No, I mean, I spend time with my wife and I love my dogs. That's about it. I live a very simple life. So at any rate, give this a like. It helps other people find it. Go check everyone out who we've mentioned thus far. So there's lots of good resources out there. People who earlier asked about Patreons, like I mentioned, like Sam, who was just in the comments. Sam has a great Patreon. You can go check that out. The other ones I mentioned, there's lots of people who offer those one-on-one tutorials. So there's lots of places out there you can go learn. I'm happy to do this. Always keep learning, always keep trying, always keep painting bravely. And as always, we'll see you next time. Bye bye, everybody, and thank you so much once again.